Hello, it is 2017. Isn't it wonderful? And guess what? It's cold. It's not only cold outside, it's cold in the studio. So Sean, she's all bundled up. I'm all bundled up. Marla's all bundled up. We're having a good time here. It's cold. So I want you to see the little image behind me right now. It's the cover of the January Sonoma County Gazette. Oh, yeah, I'm the publisher of the Sonoma County Gazette, Vesta. It's my passion. And I was looking for an image that implied the sun is always shining. And you know how you get up in the air and you're in an airplane, it doesn't matter what the weather is down below, you're above the clouds, the sun is always shining. So in my concept of optimism, looking on the bright side is always up there, sun is always shining, there's always something to get excited about, there's always warmth, there's always joy, there's yellow and blue, which are just the colors of happiness, and it's always around. And so as we head into 2017 and all the issues that we're so seriously concerned about. Okay, I'm a progressive. Everybody knows that by now. So as a progressive, it's easy to get some serious fear going in your heart about where our country is going right now. So I was asking readers to come up with reasons to be optimistic. And a whole bunch of them came through. In fact, I actually had more essays on optimism than I could fit in the print edition. So if you go onto our website at SonomaCountyGazette.com, you're going to get the whole rest of the essays on optimism, because there really is a lot of reasons to be optimistic. One of them, Stacy Menson. Stacy Menson is actually a very interesting person. She's been in public relations for a long time, and she was the PR person for the Bicycle Coalition and, a couple other things that passed through my life. But right now, she's part of the climate protection people. And she's doing a great job of being their public relations person. So she had sent out basically 5 reasons for hope. And I said, turn that into something that we can use in the Gazette, because people really need to feel confident. As you get into the concept of Trump and all his little cronies and the other people trying to put us literally into the dark ages, that whole thing of, we're going to go back to oil? You've got to be kidding. So she says, you know what, we're not going to go back to oil because it's no longer profitable. And all the industries that have put their time, energy, and money into renewable resources, it's now getting to the place where renewable resources, solar, wind, are all competitive price-wise with oil. And especially right now with the oil prices being so low, it really does make a difference to be able to say, okay, let's move forward. If we really want to move forward on the land of energy, and there's another really good reason why the renewables are extremely important to keep maintaining that path, and that is because it is a path towards independence. And whenever you have something that literally heat, you're 100% dependent upon someone for your heat. And that person is going to play with you. They're going to raise the prices. They're going to play games with you. They're not your local producer of whatever it happens to be, in this case, like oil. Okay, so oil is, we can produce a certain amount here in the United States, but a lot of it is imported from other countries. That puts us in a very dependent situation. So it's kind of interesting that the new administration coming in is doing this nationalism and bringing our fences in and saying it's all about us, and isolating us from the outside world. At the same time, increasing our dependence on foreign oil. Does that make any sense? So that's part of the new administration's idea, is that we'll pump more oil out of the ground. Well, there's a lot of people who own that land and own that oil who are saying, I don't think so. And one of the lovely things that someone brought up in this optimism idea of not pumping all the oil out and destroying the pipelines and all the rest of it, is that that product, that particular fossil fuel, is used for plastics and a whole lot of other substances that we need, aside from driving cars, creating energy. We have a lot of different ways to create energy now. One of the things that I found really interesting was the coal miners in Virginia and the whole southeast part of the world where a lot of our coal comes from. There was a Democratic congressman from, I think it was West Virginia, who was trying to get benefits for coal miners, because coal miners suffer really serious health issues. And he couldn't get it through in Congress before the whole shift occurred. So he got it put off until April, but it's still coming back on the agenda. And it's one of those things that every way that we have energy, there's somebody who's paying a price. It's almost like you can't do anything on this planet without some price to be paid. So what you look for is ways to create energy, to do some good causes, whatever it happens to be, that has the least price tag on it, the one that has the least harm. That phrase, I love that phrase, do no harm. If we always start there, that's a really good place to start. So when you get into fossil fuels and how our country is right now, the new administration is going more back to fossil fuels, for numerous reasons. You can only assume some of the reasons. You can't actually know it for sure. There's a lot of people who are in business who are going to say, no, we're not going to go back. And also the rest of the planet has moved forward with renewable energy. And so that's another reason to feel confident that we don't necessarily, our country will not necessarily take that negative path. There might be some aspect of it that will go backwards and take that negative path, but economically, for survival into the future and also to be on the world market, then we will continue to take the path of the renewable resources, the renewable energy sources. It's a very interesting thing of once there's a, I think you're probably aware of the concept of a tipping point. In a tipping point, actually it's a book, but it's a concept that when things get to a place, basically it falls forward into this next place or falls backward into this other place. It's a place where the balance is lost. You probably know this in a relationship. You fall in love with somebody and everybody's happy, joy, 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 and then things start shifting. So instead of 50-50, you're now 60-40, and then you're 70-30, and then you're 80-20, and somewhere in that 70-30, 80-20, you go, this is no longer working out for me. It's the same thing with a tipping point. All of a sudden, you're on the other side. And so with our renewable resources and our energy policies and our environmental policies, the world has shifted, not just our country, but the whole world. So like the Paris Accord is still going on. There are other countries who say, well, the United States can go backwards. We're not going to. We're going to keep going on. If you look at world energy sources and environmentalism and all of the level of technology that is occurring across this planet, Germany is the leader in all of that. Now, everybody can say, well, they made the best cars, they got the best engineers, they're just oriented in that direction. They're also very oriented towards being very energy efficient, very environmentally sound. The European Union, which is, yes, at risk, but the European Union has some of the highest standards on the planet for environmental consciousness and environmental regulations. So California is second to the European Union in terms of environmental regulations. How interesting is that? And they are ahead of us, and Germany is ahead of us. So one of the things that our country does risk is no longer being a leader. And so it's an interesting byproduct of this whole shift in the administration. I'm going to go for another thing about the shift in the administration in terms of being optimistic. It's really connected to being full of fear as well. But one of the things that we as us progressives have thought that we were actually making some serious advancements along the lines of human rights. Environmental consciousness and human rights. Those are the two things that are the top of my list for priorities. And so we really thought we had made some, excuse me for my itchy nose. There you go again. He made some serious progress with human rights. And probably we thought we had made more than we actually really had. In fact, I would say this election would give us a serious indicator that we had made not as much. But, and here's the really important part, we have made serious advancements. Because I'm closing in on 70 at this point, I know when I was a child and I grew up on the East Coast that it was black and white. It was colored and white. And colored include everybody who was yellow, brown, you name it. It was everybody who was not white. And so the society was divided that way. And when I was a little kid and I went down to see my grandparents in Florida, we would go out to dinner and there would be a restaurant where there would be a front and there would be a back. And in the back was always for the colored people. And you go to a amusement park or a theater and you could not mix. You literally could not mix. And so I've seen this in my lifetime that has changed so dramatically. And how sweet and wonderful that we got to the place where we actually had a 50-50 president. He wasn't black. He was half white and half black. He's the perfect example of how our world has shifted. when I was going, first a young adult, and then went into Manhattan, and I was living in an apartment in Manhattan, and there was a big scene out on the front stoop, and it was a beautiful young Jewish girl, and she was crying and screaming as her mother was yelling at her, and she was saying, "But I love him, Mom!" And the man that she loved was this gorgeous black man, and he was a college student, and he was really like moving forward into this life of professionalism, and she was like, "You can't marry him, he's black." And I'm thinking how far we have come, because that was actually against the law at the time. You could not marry across races. Now it's legal to marry across races. So with that legality, aside from just people falling in love and mixing up, you have laws that say not only can you marry across races, but you can marry same-sex people. All those kind of limitations are going away. That can't go backwards to a certain extent. I think that ultimately the states' rights issue, some states might fall backwards, but other states will maintain the rights that they have established for people. And so we can say here in California, well, gosh, we'll probably get a lot more people who want to live here because we got some of the best laws in California that have to do with human rights and environmental issues. There's a lot, you can feel pretty safe right here in California. And so that's another, gosh, this nose is itching like crazy. You just got to deal with this, okay? Because I got to deal with it. One of the things that's wonderful where we live here in Sonoma County and where we live in California is that we have established higher levels of human rights, of consciousness, of environmental issues. We may not be perfect, but we've come such a long way right here. So what a lot of people are doing, and you'll see it in the essays in the January Gazette on optimism, is people are looking to say, well, we need to take care of our home. And so where we have established some really good rules and regs and all the rest of it that has to do with taking care of our home, we need to hold them firm and keep moving forward. So where in the case of nationalism and being, take localism and take it into like, okay, we're not going to go past the boundaries of the United States. Well, in some cases, we're going to close ourselves in a little bit tighter, even than the United States, into the state of California. And for some of us, we're going to close ourselves into the Bay Area, and some will close ourselves into Sonoma County, and we'll close ourselves into our little towns. And it's what people tend to do when they feel vulnerable. They will start protecting what they value the most. So instead of being lightly oriented towards your value systems, you start being a little more intense about your value systems. What is really, really important to me, my family, my home, my community, my town, my area where I live? So we'll do a little bit more of that. People are understanding that community is extremely important. That's one of the issues that's happened with law enforcement. It's actually a very interesting article in the AARP magazine. That's the old people's magazine. You get over 50, you start getting it in the mail. There is a fascinating article on law enforcement about people who have families who've gone into law enforcement. And as I read the whole article, and they literally go and interview people around the country in different cities, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, families who've been in law enforcement for a long time. And what they were saying is that the law enforcement training is really changing all across the board. It doesn't matter where their law enforcement is changing. They're doing exactly what we said after the Andy Lopez issue with the park and the lack of the park and the whole thing that was going in Roseland, is that there wasn't enough community in the community, and that the law enforcement were in their cars. They were not on the streets. They were not spending time with people. And so they didn't know people. So in the case of the Andy Lopez thing, it's not like a cop is going, Andy, that's not a good idea. You shouldn't be carrying that. Let me take that from you. You look like you're a little off today. They don't know who this guy is, because if they had spent time in the neighborhood, they would have said, oh, that's Andy, right? But no, they weren't spending time in the neighborhood. They weren't spending enough. The police force was not on the ground, walking the neighborhoods, knowing the people in the neighborhoods. So in this article, they were talking about how law enforcement across the country are saying we need to get back in the neighborhoods. We need to get back on our feet. We need to spend time with people. We need to get to know people. And I found that really interesting because of the I hate police and I'm going to kill police thing that's been going on. The police are saying we need people to know who we are, because once you know who someone is, whether it's the police knowing the people in the neighborhood or the neighborhood knowing the police, all of a sudden there's a face. And when there's a face, there's a personality. And when you say, oh, that's John. Hey, how's your wife, John? How's your kids, John? All of a sudden it becomes really, really human. It's not even a person of whether it's color or whether it's economic status or whatever it happens to be. It's also a police person who has a wife and children. Everybody has family. Everybody has friends. And that's where you make your connections. So along with my concept of peace on earth, goodwill to all, that we get to fall in love with each other, make mixed children of all kinds of nationalities and races, and name it, we got all these mixed kids so we can all love each other and all be related. Same thing with community, that people are getting conscious of the concept of human to human. And so I'm still really optimistic about that, in spite of all the nastiness that's been going down with that electoral race with that man who I will not use his name. The awareness that we needed to have, that we clearly needed to have. So one of the last issue of the Gazette in December, there was a letter to the editor, and a woman had talked about an incident that happened in a Starbucks in Sebastopol, of all places, extremely progressive, where a young pregnant woman of a brown complexion, and she was not Mexican, she was not black, she was East Indian. But nobody knew that. They just went, go home, take your kid and go home. Well, she was born here in the United States, and she was very pregnant, and she took it very, very hard when these people attacked her. And nobody came to her defense in the Starbucks. It's kind of one of those, oh my God, you've got to be kidding. So people responded to that in this Gazette, in the letter section, feeling that shock of, here we are in our lovely Sonoma County, and we're so conscious and we're so aware and we're so kind to each other, and all these different levels, and people taking care of each other at all these different levels, and what? And especially, Sebastopol is so progressive. So again, consciousness. You need to be a higher level of consciousness to make sure that you are aware. And when you are aware, you start taking care of things that you didn't think needed to be taken care of. And so that's one of the ones that we are looking at. We talk a lot about taking care of people who are homeless. It's in our face that these people are suffering, and for all these kinds of different reasons. Well, maybe not in our face enough, or maybe too much in our face. The concept is that we are paying attention. Sonoma County is doing a wonderful thing with the Homeless Task Force, which is one of the issues, and then this Homes for All Summit. It's moving forward with the plans of how to pull off making sure that all the people who want to be are sheltered. Just so you know that not everybody wants to be sheltered, because there are rules and regs that go with being sheltered. So you have to be realistic about that. But in Sonoma County, we are extremely conscious, and therefore we need to protect what we have achieved. And so that's one of the things that's happening, and that's around optimism. I'm looking at a little essay here, Reasons to be Optimistic, by Jim Corbett. And Jim Corbett is Mr. Music out there in West County. He's taught music to children. He has Peacetown concerts all summer long. He put on a wonderful New Year's Eve concert. He is peace and love. He does the love choir. And the love choir is literally music that's all positive and love. And so basically he's saying, well, it's time for the hippies to come back out, but not the old hippies, not the ones that of my generation, but the young generation, the millennials and younger, who are saying, whoa, we can't go this path that the new administration wants to go. We need to rise up and say, no, we're not going there. We've achieved too much. We've gone too far. We are not going backwards. So one of the wonderful things that has come out of Standing Rock, the veterans from all over the country came and stood with the Native Americans at the pipeline in Standing Rock. And not only that, but people all over the planet started standing together with native tribes of native countries to say, you can't do this to us. So that one place opened up this whole movement across the planet saying, don't do this to people who were here first, in essence. And you can't do this for fossil fuels. And you can't mess up our water supplies. We've worked too hard to make our water supplies clean and to protect our water supplies. And we are now moving to be in control as opposed to those big corporations. One of the essays that's in the Gazette, and it's a lead story, it's written by Linda Hopkins, who is our new 5th District Supervisor. And one of the things that she says, time and money. You can vote with your time and money. Your time, you put your time into things you believe in, so you volunteer, et cetera, you know, go to your kids' school, spend some time at your kids' school. If you want to believe in education and believe in directing where children are going, then put some time into these things, into the things you believe in. Money, vote with your money. If you want if you want to be anti-corporate, then vote with your money anti-corporate. Support the small businesses that give you the objects that you want to survive, the food, the clothing, the shelter, all those things that you want. So time and money. Put your time and money into the things that you value. That's really, really important. And so it's all about surviving over the next few years. The part of it is that we need to maintain what we have accomplished. And then the other part is to literally survive. It might take more than we think to do this. In my little optimistic mind, I was thinking, the election's going to just destroy those people. Instead, it put them in power. Okay, well, they're awfully chaotic. Aren't they really ridiculously chaotic? I remember always saying, well, we need a business person in the president, you know, someone to run the government who's run a business. Oh, great, let's have someone who's gone bankrupt 4 times, 6 times, whatever he's gone bankrupt. So maybe that's not such a good idea. Be careful what you ask for, you just might get it, right? But there's a lot of chaos right now. And so I can hope in my optimistic mind that that chaos will prove to be destructive instead of constructive, to pull us backwards enough that we will say we're not going to go back any further than this has happened. I mean, here's one of the really interesting ones, right? I got a great article in here written by Veronica, what's your last name? Anyway, she's my health columnist, and she wrote about the changes in the healthcare system without the Affordable Care Act. She went right down the line, one after another, about the changes in healthcare system that are going to have a serious impact on us economically as well as personally without the Affordable Health Care Act. And so one of those things that was an interesting interview was in Kentucky. Kentucky had 400,000 people who obtained health care because of the Affordable Care Act, and they are going to lose it. And they were interviewing people who were saying, oh my God, we actually didn't think we were going to lose it. We thought they were just talking about it. Oh my God, they're actually going to take it away from us. So all that thing of, well, yay, let's destroy this thing. Oh, wait a minute. We need this thing. You know, one of the people who were interviewed, her husband is going through cancer treatments. And if it weren't for the Affordable Care Act, her husband wouldn't have health insurance because it was a pre-existing condition. She's about to lose health care for herself and for her husband as he goes into his cancer treatments. Don't you think that's the kind of thing that'll scare people enough? So on the lines of optimism, that sometimes people have to have a personal impact in order to feel the change that they need to make in terms of how they're thinking. I'm hoping, really, really hoping that enough people will feel the negativity of what I expect will be a fairly negative move that our country is making in this administration, and that we'll feel it enough that we can bounce back. I have a theory that sometimes you have to hit the extremes in order to find your comfort in center. And so we do go from extreme to extreme, and then seek our center. And that's one of those little philosophies that came out of my youth when we were all looking for spiritual paths, is to find our center. And I am a centrist, and I do believe in finding the center for things because it's balanced there. And then the spiritual concept of yin and yang. Yin and yang, the devil, the angel, the black, the white, etc., etc. Yin and yang is the powers of good and evil. It's all the seeking balance, and sometimes you don't get to seek balance at any one time. It's something that happens over a long period of time. So as we seek balance, we sometimes need to have the other side slammed in our faces. I always like that concept that you're supposed to do something. and you have this inkling that you were supposed to do something, and you go, yeah, I'll get around to it, and you just don't get around to it, and then it hits you a little harder and says, you need to take some action on this. And you go, yeah, I'll get around to it. I really will get around to it. And then all of a sudden, someone's slamming you on the shoulder, and he's like, you really need to get around to this, but you're still not paying enough attention to it. You're just not paying enough attention to it. Next thing, your life changes. You get into an accident, someone hits you over the head. You're going, okay, I'll pay attention to it. That's what it feels like to me right now with what's going on. We weren't paying enough attention to the things that we really need to be paying attention to. We weren't doing enough. We've been doing a lot. So while we move forward, let's pat ourselves on the back for everything we have accomplished, everything we have done, and keep building on it. Let's not lose ground. Let's keep building on what we have accomplished, and locally and in the Sonoma County and in the state of California as we move forward. And as our nation, we definitely need to keep paying attention to our country, where our country is going, and build on what we have done positive so that we don't lose too much during this transition that we're going through. So I wish you sunshine. I wish you sunshine warming you. I wish a heater in this room. I wish Sean could warm up. I really wish everybody the best for 2017. And I'm going to continue being optimistic because it's a choice, quite honestly. And I think we all have a choice of I can either be happy or I can be unhappy. I can either be happy or I can be depressed. I can either be miserable or I can be happy. We have a choice all the time. We make decisions. What is going to make me happy personally? What is going to make my world better? Let's keep choosing, actively choosing the thing that makes everything better for all of us. So anyway, I just want to say happy, happy, joy, joy. That's my favorite phrase, came out of Bren and Stimpy. It's one I love to use. Happy, happy, joy, joy. And let's move forward into 2017 with some optimism, some positive energy, and let's make this happen. Okay, everybody, my next issue is the love issue. So if you have any love notes you would like to pass on to other readers, why you love where you live, which is my phrase, love where you live, and anybody you want to say I love you to. I love you and I appreciate you, and that's one of the things that we can do positive, and I appreciate you.